Hello, everyone. Well, it is a fun-filled live stream kind of week. This is my fourth, I think, live stream of the week, and I still have one more to go after this because I'm going to be going live tomorrow as well. But today, we are very, very blessed to have Jennifer Friend. Jennifer Friend is a licensed clinical social worker in private practice in the Washington, D.C. area. Jennifer is a highly motivated opponent of critical race theory and critical social justice and is committed to supporting people who have been harmed by this ideology. Jennifer began volunteering for Counterweight, an organization providing assistance and resources to address critical social justice after her own adverse experience with critical race theory in the workplace, which we are going to be talking about today. Now, Counterweight actually has an article about Jen's story up online, and all of this is linked in the description below, along with links to her YouTube channel where you can see some of the things that were coming up. But I just want to read a little bit of this article as a way to introduce this conversation. For the past 15 years, Jennifer had been a clinical social worker for the county's Community Services Board. And this is in Fairfax County, Virginia, which if you guys saw the 8th grade class that I have on my channel of the 8th grader literally getting indoctrinated into social justice in their classroom, this is the same county. Fairfax County, Virginia is one of the places where this stuff is really promulgating. She was a clinical social worker for the county's Community Services Board. She provided therapy and case management for county residents with severe mental illness and or substance abuse disorders. So really important work, in other words. About a year ago, her manager informed the team at a staff meeting of the One Fairfax Equity Policy, a diversity, equity, and inclusion program, and discussed the impact of systemic racism in the county. Uncharacteristically, Jennifer raised objections. I challenged him to identify any laws or policies that were discriminatory in nature so that I could oppose them, she said. And of course, we all know these programs don't necessarily ever identify the things that they take issue with. So welcome, Jennifer. We can't wait to hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Carlin. I really appreciate it.
I'm super excited about this because what I love about your story is you're one of the few people that I've talked to that really kind of stood up and took a stand on this rather than kind of like speaking up and then sitting back and waiting for the for them to fire you. Essentially, like you were in it from the get-go, and I love it because it's like we'll get into the story for people who are just catching up, but it's a ballsy move. It is a ballsy move to be true to yourself, to maintain your own values, to say, you know what, obviously our values have diverged. We need to go our own separate ways. And it's not something most people are really scared to be in your position, but you just took it on and you did it. And, this is something that should inspire other people that it's going to be okay.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, it was quite an experience. And I guess I have kind of a big mouth when something really bothers me. So I didn't even really have to, I guess, weigh it too much. So I'll tell you a little bit about how it all started and then
Yeah.
kind of where it ended up.
Perfect. How did this all begin?
So it started out, and I call it wokeness creep. There's a few little phrases that are thrown in here or there. And then it gradually notches up before a company or institution goes full on woke. And I'd been aware of this happening for quite some time, just through the media. I was hoping it would never hit my workplace. But I knew that was a possibility because I kept reading about different people having horrible experiences with really toxic diversity trainings at their workplaces, of course, hearing about people being canceled, that type of thing. So at first, the policy, the One Fairfax policy actually started in 2017, but I didn't even know it existed. And I think most people didn't until several months actually before the death of George Floyd. Our manager announced the policy to us and announced it by talking about disparities in Fairfax County, alleging that all disparities were due to structural and systemic racism, and then showing that little graphic that probably almost everybody's seen by now, where you've got the three guys trying to watch. I think it's a baseball game.
Yes.
And
the baseball game they did not buy tickets for.
Right. That's funny. there's that point too. But they're, each standing on a box, but the little guy can't see over the fence with his one box. So then they show you the next picture, and they've taken the box away from the taller man and stuck it under the little guy, so he can now see over the fence. But the tall guy can still see too, but he's been brought down and his box was taken away from him. So they introduced it like that. And I objected and asked questions, and it wasn't really okay for me to not agree. And I got called into the manager's office and questioned about what my problem was with equity.
Well, hang on. Can I ask, what sort of questions were you asking about this program?
I asked how much money was being spent on it, for one thing, and there was no answer. And I asked, are there specific policies that you can mention, or any specific laws that are discriminatory against people of color? Because I would like to oppose those, if you can identify them for me. No. Yeah, so on the basis of that, I was, called in for a talk, which was, it's uncomfortable to be called in for something like that, just for simply questioning and asking for more information. But we had a conversation. I came with facts and statistics, facts about many other minorities in the US who actually out-earn whites, and presented those. I also challenged the manager about the term white privilege, because I was aware from looking at the minutes of their committee meetings that they were talking about white privilege, and how it was very important that everybody on the committee understand and believe in white privilege. And he really didn't know where that term even came from, that it came from Peggy McIntosh, or what the definitions are of that. So we parted on okay terms, good terms. And I just said, I'm going to continue to challenge this narrative, because I disagree with this. I support improved outcomes for everybody in Fairfax County, but I don't agree with this approach. And after that, we started having the typical things. We had an unconscious bias training, and we were told that we should be prepared to discuss that weekly in our supervision.
What?
Yeah.
Just like is a weekly meeting with your manager, you were supposed to address your unconscious bias on a weekly basis?
That's what was so bizarre to me. I was like, what exactly do you want me to say about this? So the clinicians have supervision with their supervisor, and it's really the time we have to talk about our clinical cases. And we work with a very vulnerable, high need population at the Community Services Board, people that have severe mental illness, drug addiction, sometimes are dually diagnosed with both. And that's a very important time to be able to discuss our cases and resources for these cases. And they wanted to turn it into a little platform for discussing our unconscious bias and discussing issues of equity.
That to me just seems grossly irresponsible, if I'm honest. Like, I've never been a clinician, and God bless the people who do it, but that to me seems just like if there's any arena that should be kind of like sacrosanct for focusing on the patients, that to me seems like it should be it. Am I wrong?
No, that you've just captured exactly how I felt. I feel like that time for supervision is so important, and it's so essential. And we're all so busy. You can check in with your supervisor a few minutes here or there on a complicated case, but You really need that hour. And to have, I think, ideology interjected into clinical supervision felt very uncomfortable to me, and really felt
And
like a violation of that professional relationship and that space.
well, it does. It does feel like a violation. I can absolutely understand that. And you had worked for them for how long at this point?
15 years.
15 years. And so
15
they knew
years.
you.
They knew me, and I had a really good reputation there. All of my performance reviews were excellent. I'm not a disgruntled employee or anything like that. And I had actually planned on staying there until full retirement. I was less than 6 years away from full retirement with a pension for life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So they knew that they knew like and so you started having these conversations with your manager about your pushing back against this equity program.
Yeah. So we had that first conversation. Then we then we had the unconscious bias training. And I just want to say a few things about that I
Mhm.
found kind of, I mean, they're infuriating, but it's also kind of funny. Um, One of the things that is said in that training was that as we go about our day and we become very busy, we're more likely to engage in unconscious bias because we're just preoccupied with our tasks of the day. So,
Oh
what we
my
should
god.
do is take a little break several times a day to meditate so that you, I know, so that you kind of ground yourself and become recentered and are less therefore likely to have some kind of knee-jerk racist biased response to somebody.
Okay. Okay. I've did you know I actually don't know if you know this about me. I literally wrote a book about mindfulness at work. So I
Yes.
am actually I am actually very much on board with like the 5-minute meditation breaks. But
Yeah.
you know what meditation is not going to do? It's not going to address any unconscious behaviors. Like that's actually like meditation is all I mean that it's actually the very opposite of what meditation does. Meditation is about being just like aware of your thoughts and how you're feeling and how your body's feeling and aware of your breath and just more present in the world around you. But if behaviors are unconscious, they're in the subconscious part of your brain. Meditation is not going to help access them in that way. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really I'm laughing about it now, but at the time it really it really kind of creeped me out. I was in the meditation community for years and years and years, and I used to be
Yeah.
a Buddhist, and to me I felt almost um like they're saying this is what you should do with your spiritual practice. You should use your spiritual practice to be less racist. It's kind of like if you
Right.
said to Christians a few times a day, just take a little prayer break and pray not to say anything or do anything racist accidentally.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I mean, I'm not even like we all have unconscious things. And I think one of the things that these people never talk about, and I'd love to get your perspective on this too because you have the same perspective is that, we can have unconscious bias about anything. About
Hmm.
anything. If we had like say growing up, I had an uncle that I really hated that was just a really, really bad person and he always wore a red sweater. Well, guess what? Like red sweaters for me are always going to be triggering on some level because they're always going to remind me of that uncle that I hated. And that has nothing to do with his race. It's a negative experience that we make these weird associations with and it becomes something that is irksome and uncomfortable when it shouldn't be. There's no rational reason for it, but that's just the way it is. You can't ever rid yourself of all of these things. It's just ridiculous. And to assume that every single person just has racist unconscious bias, I don't buy into that. What do you think about that idea?
I don't buy into it. And the first of all, I would like to say that just from a privacy standpoint, I don't believe that our employers have a right to know what's in our unconscious. The unconscious, by
No.
definition, is private. They have a right to be aware of our behaviors. And if we do something at work that's inappropriate, they have a right to address that. I think that what's inside our skulls is simply off limits. It is none of their business. And unconscious, those implicit bias tests actually really are measuring reaction time more than they are measuring true unconscious bias. And also, it's been shown that unconscious bias has a very minimal connection to actual behavior.
Right. Right. I mean, so many good points you just brought up there. I remember taking the unconscious bias test, and it was just like on my phone. And I was like, if you're really good at video games, you're going to do really great at this test. Or like, I'm very dexterous because of the knitting. So I was like, this is not even going to be a problem. And magically, it showed that I had no unconscious bias, which then I took a screenshot of that result and like used it everywhere every time someone accused me. I was like, no, Harvard says I'm fine. Um, which of course was BS. And you know what's so funny about it is like anytime I would show the SJWs that screenshot of like I took the Harvard test, it says I'm fine. They're like, well, that test isn't accurate anyway. And I was like, then why are you telling people to take this test?
Right, right. It's only accurate when you want it to be accurate, you know?
Exactly. But the other thing you brought up, and this is actually something, so like one of the things I most commonly do in organizations is manager training. And so I have a whole actual training module on how to like give people feedback properly in a way that they're going to be more receptive to and like open to and things like that. And how to have productive conversations. And one of the things I always told managers was, you cannot give feedback based on what is in people's heads. It gives you no leg to stand on because maybe you're right and maybe you're wrong, but regardless, they can always come back and say, well, that's not what I was thinking. And then you just have a conflict over nothing. You have to give feedback based on someone's behavior. If you can't observe it with your eye, then you shouldn't be giving feedback on it at work. And these are conversations that managers are not equipped to have these conversations about what's going on in people's psyche. It's completely unfair to the manager and it's completely unfair to the employee as well.
That's a really good point. If I was a manager or supervisor, I would not be comfortable having that type of conversation. It seems extraordinarily intrusive and unprofessional to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Well, I just want to acknowledge real quick a couple super chats that I've gotten from Naruto, and thank you, Naruto, for the support. I just read an article about the Christian devotional. It includes a prayer. God help me hate white people. Yeah, I've heard about this article. I tagged you and others in a tweet about it. I will definitely check this out. I've heard about it. I have not read the whole thing yet because, I just
I
haven't.
read it.
Oh God, how did you find it, Jen?
Oh God, I found it revolting, actually. It's this dear God, help me hate white people and their poor, misguided, racist souls. And the whole theme of the poem is she's asking God to help her hate white people, but she just can't. She can't quite hate us, even though we're so deserving of hate.
Oh my God.
It's kind of self-congratulatory and at the same time yeah, oh God, it's I'm at a loss for words. It's terrible. It's
It's just so
really racist.
sad. It's so sad. I mean, this is what we've driven people to. It's just crazy. Naruto always says meditating on your unconscious bias sounds like pray the gay away. Not quite the same thing, but similar.
Interesting. That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah. All right. So you had this unconscious bias training. What happened then?
Oh my gosh. Well, I will say that this the culture change was contributing to my desire to leave and go into private practice. I started thinking more and more about that. And um, then George Floyd's terrible death happened. And it was like overnight, the entire agency changed drastically. Where wokeness had been creeping in, it was now full on critical race theory, critical social justice. They had they started using staff meetings to talk about George Floyd's situation. And of course, you could only talk about it from the perspective of this is just a symptom of absolute systemic racism and violence towards Blacks in the police force. We had 2 staff meetings like that. And then on the One Fairfax equity website for employees, all of this virulently racist CRT material appeared. And our manager had sent a link to our team asking us to access it to begin to learn more about equity. And so I accessed it, and it was full of the worst types of CRT material that's out there. Like, there was the article by Tatiana Mack, White Woman's Tears, about how white women use their tears to manipulate other people, and that white women use the police as a murder for hire squad in order to kill Black men.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it said that white women routinely hold down Black, brown, disabled, and trans people, that we use microaggressions as a weapon. It had a whole litany of wild accusations against white women.
What do you think? What do you think causes people to write material like that?
God,
Like, I'm gonna say, I mean, this is like, honestly, like, what has to happen in someone's life for them to spend, I mean, even just to write a single article, never mind a book or a series of books, like, just this, they're making stuff up and presenting and distorting things into the worst possible way to spin people up to hate an entire population of people.
Yeah, I think that, there's sort of different levels of wokeness, and I don't take the view that all woke people are virulently hateful, but I do think that when you see expressions like that, where you're painting everybody, an entire race of people, with such a broad brush and presenting them as inherently dangerous to others, I think I recognize that as hatred, and I also recognize that as being racism.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So this crazy article blaming white women for everything under the sun was on this website. What else was on this website?
Yeah, everything under the sun. There was also an article saying that Christian hegemony must be broken down and dismantled because Christianity is responsible for white supremacy. There was a podcast making fun of white women, saying that we are Becky's and Patty's, and when we get to a certain age, we're Karens, and we have our pumpkin spice lattes and want to speak to the manager, and we have reached peak entitlement, and casual white supremacy is the norm.
I will always enjoy a pumpkin spice latte. I don't care what these people have to say about it.
There's no shame. There's no shame.
No.
Don't latte shame us.
Yes, exactly. Latte privilege.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in that podcast, they basically denigrated people on the basis of race, on the basis of sex, and on the basis of age, because Karens are middle-aged, entitled white women. So there was that. There were also articles defending the rioting over the summer. Articles advocating for defunding the police, and articles advocating for completely abolishing the police. Articles encouraging us to give money to Black Lives Matter. Articles suggesting that white people should do a somatic exercise, again, sort of a meditation exercise, that we should sit silently with our eyes closed to explore where racism lives in our bodies.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Reborn sent in a super chat saying, pity for the woke crowd is a huge mistake, period. I understand when I hear what you just said, like, I understand that perspective that, like, we should not have pity on these people. But at the same time, I have to have pity on them because these people are not well. The people writing these materials, the people that, like, if someone is saying to you, like, meditate on where racism is in your body, well, I have to look at them and think that they're basically projecting, like Robin DiAngelo, that they have some pretty racist attitudes that they're working through. And it's
Yeah.
easier for them to come to the conclusion that everyone is like them rather than to just focus on themselves.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think there is so much projection involved in this. And I think that might be your inner world. That's not my inner world. And you don't get to tell me what my inner world is.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's such a good point too. Is like they always try to tell they try to assert things onto other people, and I think the way you just said it is so beautiful. Like, you don't get to do that, or employers, you don't get to be mind reader. You don't get to dictate what's in here. You are paying me a salary for me to come in and execute a job and execute certain job responsibilities. You don't get to say what's in my head.
Exactly. And that's part of the problem with this. I think people have a right to believe whatever they want to believe. Of course, people have a right to believe in critical social justice, critical
Mhm.
race theory. They have an absolute right to hold those ideas. I disagree with them strongly, but they have a right. They don't have a right to impose this on employees. Holding a particular ideology has nothing to do with performing my former job function.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. It has nothing to do with it. And
Yeah,
and and for and oh my gosh.
I
Okay, so
know.
I want to make sure we get our story. So like this website goes up, you see it. It's now beyond any kind of reasonable, kind of like plausible deniability. Like they've gone off the deep end of woke. What did you
Yeah.
do next?
Oh my God. Well, honestly, I think I sat like this for like 20 minutes. And my
It feels
husband,
like you're in an alternate reality, doesn't it?
oh, yeah. I mean, I was in this weird frozen state. And, my husband is like, what is wrong with you? Because, of course, I'm working at home and I just like stupidly point to the screen. I'm like, Um, so I thought about it and at first I was like, I think I'm just going to say something back to the manager and to the team that he sent this email to saying, please look at the website.
Mhm.
So I did. I sent an email, a very polite, professional email expressing my concerns and sent it just to our team and the manager. And then I decided to send it to the other team that was in our suite because I knew they'd be getting the links too. And the next thing that I got was a invitation from the manager to attend a Zoom meeting with my direct supervisor and human resources.
Mhm.
And it was for a discussion about the very sensitive issues of race and equity. Nothing was said about, oh, thank you for bringing this to our attention. These things should not be on the website. This is a terrible thing. No, I took that as that's punitive. You're going to send me to HR. HR is not there in that situation to represent the interest of the employee or to
No.
defend me or advocate for me in any sense whatsoever. So that meeting was supposed to take place the following week. And that weekend, I decided that I should really look at the site a bit more because at that point, I'd only seen a small amount of the information on that site. I never even got to see the whole thing. It was very dense with articles and podcasts. So I spent the weekend looking at the site and just found more information that was along the same lines, really shocking, really racist. And I just basically decided that weekend that I wanted to make a statement to the entire agency, the Community Services Board, to let them know my concerns and that I absolutely disagreed with this and opposed it. And I thought it was so shocking and so racist and so dangerous to paint an entire group of people this way on the basis of immutable characteristics. I felt like everybody should know. And I wanted to publicly say, I do not support this. I would be ashamed to be associated with such information. So I sent an email agency-wide discussing my concerns with the material. I talked about what was in the material and directed people where to look. And the director of the Community Services Board responded by sending a CSB-wide letter saying that a staff person had written an email with containing multiple inaccuracies and defending the material, saying that this is all part of our very important equity efforts. And this is all part of reducing disparities. And I was so disgusted that that was the response. I think there was part of me that thought that maybe that stuff was on the website accidentally, and they're going to say, "Oh my goodness, we are so sorry. We're horrified that this was on there." But that was, that was clearly a fantasy of mine because I had already told them in the other letter what was in there. So at that point, I had turned my notice in a few weeks earlier, but I wasn't supposed to. My last day was supposed to be November the 6th. But when I saw that email, this was like September the 29th, I decided I'm quitting right now. I will not click another key on the keyboard for these people. This is disgusting. And so I wrote another email and quit publicly. And it was interesting because after the director sent that email, he shut down my ability to send an agency-wide email. So, yeah.
Of course.
And so I just started sending it to individuals, and then found out, somebody called me to help me and said, "Hey, you can't send it agency-wide, but you could probably send it to different locations." So I started doing that. And while I was doing that, they shut down my entire system. It was like,
I love it, but this is a boss move. I mean, come on, you just up and quit. It was like you were basically like,
I was done. I was done. I was so disgusted and so profoundly disappointed.
Yeah.
That I just was like, this does not represent my values, and I don't want to be associated with an agency that would speak like this about its employees. And if it had been any group of people that they were denigrating in that manner, I would absolutely have done the same thing. And so what they didn't know at the time was that I had YouTubed the material. I videoed it on my cell phone. I just videoed myself scrolling through the website and highlighting different articles and different lines from articles. And I YouTubed it, and I also sent it to the Fairfax County Chief of Police because I felt that he really had a right to know, because the Fairfax County Police Department is, of course, part of Fairfax County government. Those are county government employees. And how the county government can have articles on its website suggesting we defund and abolish its own police force really makes no sense to me. And I don't like that they were kind of ginning up hatred for the police and kind of presenting definitely presenting their own police force as a murder for hire squad and something that needs to be abolished. I thought stirring up this kind of hatred towards the police could possibly result in people attacking the police.
Oh, sure.
And so for safety reasons, I felt like the police had a right to know how their own employer was talking about them. I mean, what a betrayal to say that about your own employees. So yeah, I sent it to them. And then later that evening, an email went out, which I only know about because some of my inside people let me know that the CSB director sent an email saying that unfortunately the material on the website was YouTubed and sent to the chief of police, and it has now been removed in an abundance of caution.
Oh, so you got them to take the materials down after you outed them to the police.
Yes, it all was taken down, but they knew about it beforehand and they weren't going to take it down. They were defending it. And so then after it got publicly exposed, they tried to kind of walk it back by saying, some of it doesn't represent our values.
Uh-huh.
Some of it doesn't. Oh, that's nice. I'm so glad that some of it doesn't represent your values.
Mhm.
It was just it was a crazy time. Let's put it
That
that way.
well, okay, but I mean, this is like a big win though, and it's like it feels. I want to ask you, like, how did it feel when you found out that they were forced to take this material down after you outed them to the police?
Good. Good. It felt, you know, it it did feel like a victory. It felt great. I had people writing to me that I had never even met yet saying, "Oh, I didn't want you to quit. I wanted you to stay and fight for us. I don't feel like I can stand up. My health insurance is here." Or I'm a single mom and I have two kids and I can't afford to lose my job. And I received emails from quite a few people thanking me before I got shut out of the system. And I didn't want to abandon my colleagues to this hostile
Mhm.
work environment. I wanted to do something for them. And I feel like I did. And that gives me some satisfaction. I mean, I didn't have to do any of this because I was leaving in November anyhow. I could have just ignored this entire thing and quietly left. But
Mhm.
I felt like it's too serious of an issue
Mhm.
to do
Well, and I
that.
think one of the things, and I want to go down this road for just a minute because I just want to point out you had support within the organization for what you were doing. How many people did you hear from, and what were kind of some of the things that they were saying to you after you sent out that email?
Yeah, I had quite a few people thanking me. I had a few people saying um, that they've been really upset about the toxic approach to diversity that Fairfax County was taken, that they've been upset about it for quite some time, but felt like they couldn't stand up, and they were very grateful. And then I had people write to me and tell me that um, my quitting was just an example of my white privilege and the white privilege
Oh.
that we need to dismantle in society. I had a few emails telling me that I really needed to read Robin DiAngelo. Um, so I did get some of those. And those emails all use the exact same phrases, I noticed.
Yeah.
You need to sit with the discomfort. You need to understand you're part of a white supremacist system, and therefore you also are guilty of white supremacy. A lot of just the same language, encouraging me to embrace my collective guilt and my
Mhm.
whiteness, and to, become an ally and sort of apologize for myself just on the basis of my race.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like this is something that this is a question I have that I can't quite get the answer to yet. What do you think is so compelling about this ideology that it sucks in like otherwise smart people to the point where they're sending emails to colleagues that they've worked with for 15 years in your case to say you really need to examine your white privilege, like, because that to me just seems like a total shift in it's like something has come in and taken over their brain and they're not seeing clearly.
Yeah, it feels like that. That's what I call the sort of woke zombie syndrome. I think that I think that there are some people who are genuinely um, well intentioned, and they see this mistakenly as a continuation of the civil rights struggle. They think
Yes.
that this is just the next step in progress. And I don't think they've necessarily really thought it through carefully. And so they don't see that this is actually a 180 from civil rights efforts. So this is taking us in a regressive direction, back to
Mhm.
seeing everybody on the basis of our identity groups instead of taking people as individuals. It's the direct opposite, really, of Martin Luther King's work, because he was very much about looking at each person as an individual, judging people on the basis of their character and their actions. And this is saying, no, don't do that. View
Mhm.
people on the basis of which identity group they belong to or even appear to belong to.
Mm-hmm.
And it paints
Yeah.
everything with a very broad brush.
Well, and I think, I understand why younger people get sucked into this, because at least, from I remember being 18, 19 years old and fighting for civil unions in Vermont and feeling like we were fighting that good fight where everyone could love who they wanted to love. And that was really like one of the last real civil rights battles to take place, was gay marriage, right? And that was exciting. And you do look back at the civil rights movement and you're like, oh, if I lived in the 60s, I would have been on those buses in, Alabama or whatever. And, it's an exciting thing to be to fight for what is right in the
Yeah.
face of like what is wrong. That is enticing. And so I can absolutely understand why younger people might say, we don't have any civil rights battles left to fight, but we can fight this one. I can understand why that would be intriguing to people. What I cannot understand is why people who are old enough to know better, some of whom lived through the actual civil rights movement, who are trained, in mental health and counseling and social work like you are, like what I can't understand is why those people can't see what they're doing, aren't doing the meditation that they want you to do to reflect on your racism, to reflect like, what am I really contributing to the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I am tremendously frustrated with that and very disappointed to see the field of mental health
Yes.
being taken over by woke ideology. It's it really has infected the field. And it's interesting that somebody wrote in earlier and mentioned that poem about God help me to hate white people, because that was actually written by a psychologist who also did a talk saying that whiteness is a disease and a pathology, and then asking white people, how does it feel to know that you are the problem?
Wow.
Really demonizing language. And we've seen historically how it can, I'm not saying it will, but how it can end when you demonize a particular group of people and gin up hatred towards them and paint them as dangerous. They must be contained because they're dangerous. We know how that can go. And it shocks me that therapists cannot see that. I'm very, very disappointed that they don't. There is a nice group of therapists called Critical Therapy Antidote that are therapists that have made a commitment to keep ideology out of their work. So they're politically neutral. And I'm very, very grateful that I found them. Mm-hmm. It's a really good resource. And we're trying to pull together a directory of non-woke therapists, because we now have clients who are saying, I've been canceled or I've been bullied and I have no therapist I can talk to because I live in an area where most of the therapists are woke.
Yeah. Oh, I get emails all the time. Not so much now, like, but I used to get emails every single day of people saying, I need a non-woke therapist. I need a non-woke therapist. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like most of them are going to be woke. You got to shop around. You got to try your therapist on for size. And it's like, even 5 years ago, this was not a problem.
Yep. Yeah. It is amazing how fast it took off. It's like,
yes. Yeah.
It's really quite an explosion.
And that to me is one of the most terrifying things of all this, is just like how quickly it's escalating, and how now every single problem is about race, according to the media, that is being pumped into everyone's, living rooms all day.
Yeah. Well, it really makes you think that we're probably, with all that attention being diverted over to race and alleged systemic discrimination, it makes you wonder what we're missing that we should be working on. Like, I'm aware that some of these schools that are really turning everybody's eyes towards their diversity, inclusion, equity efforts, a lot of those schools don't have children performing math and reading on grade level.
Yeah.
And that's a much harder, thornier problem for them to fix. And I think they're diverting attention away from that, away from the fact that their school is failing the children, by
Mm-hmm.
promoting equity, equity, equity.
Mm-hmm.
You
No, I
know?
completely agree. This is actually a conversation I've had with some people in my locals community, and Deb, who runs a YouTube channel called The Reason We Learn, which everyone should subscribe to. But you know, we've talked about this, how like when this stuff comes up in your school, that one of the very best things you can do is just go and ask these dumb questions at like your school board meeting. Like, okay, this is great that we're integrating all this stuff into the curriculum. How is that going to help my kid read? How is that going to help my kid do math? How is that going to help my kid be better at science? Like, and really like acting dumb and asking like very directly, how is this going to help any sort of like these core educational foundations that the school, like, how many more kids are failing school right now than were like even a year ago? Like, how is
Yeah.
this going to help them pass their classes?
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How is this really preparing them for
Mm-hmm.
college or some type of skilled training program? And it was so interesting in your Fairfax County video that you did about the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that. Um, that English class that was spending the entire session on, essentially critical race theory type ideas. I noticed the teacher was
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, we're going to summarize this. We're working on summarizing. So it's very clever because they've woven CRT into the curriculum. Because if it
Mm-hmm.
was just, oh, here's an equity class or something, well, you could opt out of that. But it's in English class.
Yeah.
So it's embedded. And I think it's done in a way so that parents won't know what the school's doing.
No, that's 100% what it is. And the thing is too is, and we've absolutely found this in New Hampshire, is that if you call the school and ask them, "Are you teaching critical race theory?" No, no, we're not teaching critical race theory. We don't even know what critical race theory is. But then you actually get the curriculum, you get the classes, and you're seeing they're absolutely teaching this stuff. They're just not calling it critical race theory.
Yeah.
In almost every single case, that's what's happened, and it's scary. All right, let me just acknowledge some super chats to this mystery person. Thank you for the $10. I greatly appreciate the
Oh,
support.
that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really, like, you got my audience is great. You guys help me out. Swift Justice 2020 says fight the diversity social justice cult. I think we're both trying, man. We're both
Yeah.
trying in our individual
We're
ways.
on it.
Andrea L says just because someone is smart doesn't make them right. Oh gosh, truer words have never been spoken
Thank you.
there.
Yeah.
And just because someone has a degree in something doesn't mean that they're necessarily smart about all things either. I mean, this is something like, I have a PhD, so what? It means I'm very smart in a very niche subject area. It doesn't mean I'm smart in everything else.
Right.
Godart Bazaar says Trump was the trigger for some reason. Well, the thing of it is like, yes, Trump was the one that, brought out the worst, I think, in the left, but this was going on before then. It was just and what they do is they look for opportunities to advance their ideology. And in Trump,
Yeah.
they got this big opportunity. George Floyd, big opportunity. This Atlanta shooting, big opportunity.
Yeah.
And they wait. And it's like the thing I always come back to as an example is like, remember when the pandemic first started and there was no social justice nonsense going on for like 2 months because
Yeah,
there
it
was
was so nice.
it was so nice. It was so quiet. And we were just, and then at some point I was like, what's going on? It was like, it was too quiet in the house. Like, where are all the social
Right.
justice people? Because they couldn't speak out because all of a sudden there was like a real problem to deal with in the
Yeah.
world. And then George Floyd happened and boom,
Yeah.
they were there and they were ready to go. And that was exactly what they were waiting for.
Yes, I agree. They were on it, and they successfully co-opted that tragic death. Really, they really did. They very successfully co-opted it.
It was crazy. And it's still crazy. And, I'm really worried about what's going to happen because Derek Chauvin, I don't think is going to get convicted of what they want him to get convicted of. He might get convicted of some lesser charge just because the jury might feel like they need to do something, but there are going to be riots.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's any way around it. Okay, Blob Monster says, this is actually a good question for you, Jen. Is it possible to go to social worker school and actually get a job and stay employed if you are not woke? Well, you're in private practice now, so
Yeah,
that might be the answer.
It's what private practice is wonderful, and I would highly recommend it for everybody once you get your clinical license. Um, but yes, I think it is. I think it is possible, but I think you're going to have to really decide if that's your goal, that you are going to kind of take a very gentle approach to any questioning that you do of this, because there have been problems with students in school getting into trouble with their professors for questioning this. Unfortunately, this is part of the curriculum
Mhm.
now in school for licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, psychologists, marriage and family therapists. Everybody's getting a dose of it. And so you have to decide if you feel like it's worth it to meet that goal of being a therapist. And then the agency that you work in is likely to have it, and you'll have to decide how to navigate that. But to be in this field and avoid it, no, I don't think it's possible. There's some artful ways of dealing with it, but you're going to come into contact with it definitely.
Mhm. No, I totally agree, and I am so thankful that I don't need, like, licensure to be able to do the type of work that I do, because people have tried to cancel my license, like, more I'm like, "I don't even need a license, congratulations." But, I mean, it's really hard, and I was actually just having another conversation with a different member of my locals community, an hour ago, where, he is in school to, I think basically be in a program to help kids with autism. And those programs are getting infused with this stuff. And he was wondering how to deal with it and navigate it. And my answer to him, and I hated that I had to give this answer, but I was like, if you believe that the profession you're going to school for is noble, then you just need to suck it up and tell them what they want to hear and get the
Yeah.
degree and log everything that they're doing and leak it to people like me or Chris Rufo or anyone that can expose it. But, protect yourself and get that degree, because you're like, that's a higher purpose.
Right.
And, you need to be able to get the credential to be able to do that work. And it's critically important that non woke people are going into fields like that, or they are becoming therapists, or, what have you, or social
Yeah.
workers.
I
But
agree.
it's pain to get there.
Yes. Yes, it really is. And we've had at Counterweight, we've had some clients that have come to us for help because they've run into difficulty with their professors, because even slight disagreement with the ideology that's being presented in class, and I mean very gentle, mild, polite disagreement and just intellectual interest, has gotten people in trouble with professors. Or you might get a failing grade on a paper that you write because the
Mhm,
professor doesn't think that you're supportive enough of critical social justice.
mhm. Well, I wanna come back to your work with Counterweight in a
Yeah.
second, but Chapter Master Dante says, "Keep the fight up the fight, ladies." Question for Jennifer: Are you a woman of faith? I would like to know if faith in a higher power is a bulwark to the woke.
Oh, well, yeah, I am actually. I won't go into too much of it because I don't want to bore people half to death, but I'm kind of a very odd little spiritual mutt. I wasn't raised in any religion, and actually was Buddhist for many years, and then was part of the Bhakti yoga community.
Oh.
Had wonderful, wonderful experiences, but I felt like there were some kind of things in my life that were going unanswered, and some extra support that I needed just in trying to understand my daily life better. And so I actually converted to Christianity,
Hmm.
and it does help me tremendously. It's
Mhm.
keeping me sane so far.
No, I definitely find the same because I mean, people who watch the channel know I'm not a religious person at all. I don't really believe in organized religion, but I'm a very spiritual person. I've got a very like I'm connected with God and all that stuff. I'm good. But I really think that that is what saved me from getting sucked into this, because I think it's about like that perspective that there is a higher purpose in life and there are higher principles. And also the way I look at things is like, everything happens for a reason. Sometimes we go through struggles. We might choose to be oppressed, because I believe that we choose what experience we have here. But I believe that some people might choose to be oppressed so that they can, on a spiritual level, really like really get a better have much more gratitude over what it means to be free. right? If you want to really understand one type of experience, well, go experience the opposite of it. And so I think that there are deeper spiritual reasons why some of these things might occur. Now, that does that mean that we don't try to stop actual oppression? Well, no, because
Right.
that's a different experience in and of itself. But to just say that, you know, that there aren't reasons for the way things kind of work out, I just think is a little bit short-sighted. And I think being involved in a spiritual community or even just a practice can help you have that greater perspective.
Yes, it definitely helps to broaden things. Yeah, and to also realize that, I think for me, realizing that absolutely when there's problems, address them, but you cannot realistically expect Earth to be a utopia. It is not.
No. And it wouldn't even be like if it was a utopia, well, there's someone controlling all of that. That's not real.
Right. That's
Brave
right.
New World, like Brave New World was a utopia, but
Right. Yeah.
no one was free.
Yeah, sometimes it's, the efforts to create utopias usually create hells.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not what you think it is. Six Semper Tyrannus says, saw your last stream, bunch of walking, contradicting, self-projecting crybabies on repeat. Who couldn't point out what's wrong with HB 544? Yep, that's exactly right. In the last stream I did, none of them actually addressed the bill that they were complaining about. They just complained for an hour and a half, and it was kind of funny. And then later today, if you guys haven't seen my video today, the people that were doing that webinar yesterday actually made racist attacks against an Arab American who happens to be a Republican state representative in New Hampshire. So it's
Ugh.
always the way it works out. It's like these people are always like they call everyone else a racist, and then they're the very first people to like use racial slurs, or in this case they said this guy
Yeah.
was a disgrace to his race. Like, that's racist.
Yes, hello, that's racist. It's like I've heard several Black intellectuals say that, conservatives never call me racist names when I disagree with them, but as soon as I disagree with the left, they start using horrible racial slurs against me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, so after this experience, you left your job there, you left it behind. They had to pull the materials down on the website because you outed them. And then you went to work with Counterweight. What are you doing with Counterweight?
Yeah. So I am so lucky to find Counterweight. I mainly found them because I was just a pest when all that was going on. I was just sending my videos everywhere. I was kind of like, help me, help me. This is crazy what's going on. And they're so lovely there. Helen's assistant reached out to me, and I ended up working with them doing basically listening sessions for people that have been impacted by critical social justice and critical race theory. Usually it's people that have been impacted by it at work or at school or university. We are getting a lot of requests now too from people that are just finding that their personal relationships are falling apart over
Yeah.
disagreement with this ideology. It seems that people that subscribe to this ideology are extraordinarily intolerant of people who will not go along with it.
Yes, that is very true.
Causing a lot of tension in families and friendships. People are losing important relationships in their lives. And so they're coming to us for that. But so, yeah, what I do there is I do individual listening sessions for people and offer them support and resources. And we're pulling together a group so that people can all share together their experiences, support one another, learn from one another. We're going to be doing Zoom groups for that. What I have found for myself, and I'm finding it to be very true for the people that I work with, that one of the most powerful ways of getting through this is to find a community of people who share your principles, that believe in individualism and free speech, in judging people as individuals, not on the basis of their race or their sex or their religion. And I think that's how we're going to get through this, is by all supporting one another.
No, I completely agree with that, and I think, I tell people all the time, like, my locals community is one of the places that have kept me sane throughout all this, because like it's a community, and a lot of my locals are even here watching this right now. It's a community of people that we have support. We have Zoom support groups actually twice a week. I was just doing one right before this. They last like 2 to
That's
3
awesome.
hours.
Oh,
It's
that's
great.
awesome. Yeah.
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 And I love, I mean, and there are other support groups that I have too out there in the world, and it's just, it makes all the difference, and it helps you to see, because I think when you're in it, I don't know if this was your experience, but for me, when all of this stuff started happening around me with my friends and the knitting people and all this stuff at the same time, I thought I was going crazy. I really did. I was like, why can I see that this is not okay and no one else can see it? Like, what is going on? These were reasonable people like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? And
Yes.
you feel like you're going insane. Did you have that?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. And what you're saying is exactly what people are saying to me through Counterweight.
Mm.
Yeah, you start noticing this, you start becoming concerned. Nobody else around you sometimes is sharing those concerns, or if they are, they're silent about it. And um, and then the anxiety hits too. You know, for a lot of people, they feel like I have to choose between living my principles and my values and being able to feed myself and my family. So there's
Mhm.
a lot of anxiety around that. And then there's anxiety for people who do speak up and maybe get a bad response, a harsh response from their employer. Maybe their employer becomes punitive. Maybe their school becomes punitive. People are really suffering because of this. But one of the things that people always say to me is, you know, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've really been able to talk about this openly without fear. I've been so afraid of saying the wrong thing, and I feel so alone. I have felt like I'm going crazy. This really divides people, and it also it becomes profoundly isolating for
Mhm.
people to feel like,
Yeah.
hey, the colleagues I've worked with and gotten along with all these years, all of a sudden now there's weird tensions at work, and I've been painted as an oppressor in front of all my colleagues, and another set of my colleagues has been painted as the oppressed. It does not help employee it does not help employee relations.
No.
It does not successfully create a more cohesive, diverse workforce at all.
No. It destroys psychological safety on the team, and psychological safety is
Yeah.
hard enough to build in any working environment, and it's also the thing that is the number one contributing to the number one contributing factor to successful teamwork in organizations. Psychological safety. And they're just destroying it. And what's worse, I mean, psychological safety has been studied in organizations for years, but one of the biggest studies that took place, or the most well-known studies, came out of Google. Google
Oh.
knows this. Google studied their entire staff for 2 years, and what they did was they kind of separated their working groups into like their high performing groups and their just average performing groups, because there are no low performing groups at Google. But they took the high performing ones out, and they said, what is it about these teams that make them high performing? And they actually did a longitudinal study on this, and they found out it was psychological safety by a mile and a half. And this was publicized everywhere. I have spoken about this work at conferences. This was all over the HR community. And then all of a sudden, like 2 years ago, everyone just stopped talking about it.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can believe that though. And I mean, to me, if you want to break down divisiveness in the workplace, really get people working together for a common purpose,
Oh yeah.
that is what breaks down divisions
Mm-hmm.
between
No,
people.
well, it's true. And I think that goes into the analogy, like I always like to make, that there are two types of people in the world. There are creators and there are destroyers. And creators are focused on a goal, on building something, on giving something to the world. And they don't get sucked into all of the nonsense as much because they have a tangible goal. They are giving something of value, whether that be a big thing or a small thing. But destroyers, most of the time, because they don't feel like they have the self-worth or they have the ability to contribute to meeting that goal, they have self-esteem issues a lot of times, they end up trying to destroy the good work that other people are doing, and
Mm.
that's how they validate themselves in some weird way. And I think most people fit into one of those two categories. If you are not creating something or giving value to the world, you're just setting yourself up to get sucked into ideologies like this, because you're going to try to find your self-worth somewhere. And if you aren't giving something of value, then, taking away what other people are doing and complaining about how they're not validating your experience, that might be the route you go. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking about some of the language in critical race theory, which is destructive language.
Mm.
Dismantling comes up over and over again,
Oh my gosh, that's right.
right?
Hmm. Jen, what do you think? You've talked to a lot of people through Counterweight. What are some of the things? What are some of the psychological ramifications of being in environments like this where you feel like you're surrounded by the woke? What do you think are going to be some of the long-term ramifications of this entire ideology?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm looking at it right from an individual perspective. I've seen it really impact people's ability to do their jobs because they are completely terrified of saying the wrong thing or choosing to not agree and then facing those repercussions. A lot of people have found that their work performance has gone down. I've talked to several people that have had to take medical leaves of absence because they have been treated badly in their workplace for not subscribing to this ideology. And they are finding that their relationships with their colleagues are not as good as they were. It is absolutely affecting people's mental health on an
You know,
individual basis. People with anxiety attacks, panic attacks, sleep disturbance. It's having a really bad effect. And just that isolation and sense of being alone. And as to what it's going to do to society overall, divisiveness and destruction until, in my opinion, until we can stop this and take a more positive approach.
I agree. And as you were talking, I was just pulling up. So I want to show you this. And I just want to go through the list. So I wrote my doctoral dissertation about workplace bullying, right? So I did a lot of work with different workplace bullying and different organizations. And here is a little checklist that I wrote to help evaluate whether or not you are the target of workplace bullying. And it occurred to me when you were speaking just then that what you're describing are different attributes of workplace bullying. And so
Yeah.
I want to just go down the list and ask you if these are some of the things that the people you're talking through at Counterweight have experienced.
Oh, yeah.
So do that. So we have work related topics up here. We've got personal related topics, and then you get into the severe stuff at the bottom. But have they had information withheld from them that affects their performance if they're not buying into this woke stuff?
I don't think I've seen that yet. The people that I've talked to.
Okay, so we're going to be ethically honest about this. I'm going to put a little X in that column. Having work assigned to them that is below their level of competence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
that happened. I was going to put once a month for your answers because we won't get into the nitty gritty. That's too personal.
Yeah.
Having their opinions ignored. Has that happened?
Oh gosh, yes. Heavens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having tasks assigned to them with meeting unreasonable deadlines.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Having their work micromanaged or excessively monitored.
Yes.
Yes. Being pressured to not take advantage of job benefits such as sick or vacation days or reimbursement for expenses.
I don't think so.
No. Having a workload assigned to them that is unmanageable.
Not from someone I've talked to now.
Okay. Do they have the experience of being humiliated or ridiculed?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Oh
Do
yes.
they have key areas of responsibility removed and replaced with trivial or unpleasant tasks?
Yes.
Yes. Do they have gossip and rumors spread about them?
Yes.
Yes. Are they purposefully ignored or excluded from the team?
Yes.
Are they insulted or have offensive remarks made about them?
Yes.
Do they experience hints or signals that they should quit their job?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Are they are they repeatedly reminded of errors or mistakes they have made?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
All right, we'll give them a no. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Do
Yeah.
they experience being the target of practical jokes played on them by people they don't get along with?
No.
No. Do they have allegations made against them?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I
Always
would assume.
allegations of harm.
Exactly. I was gonna say, like, if they're not having
Never
that to me,
defined. You have been
yes.
harmful, people being called dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Are they the target of excessive teasing or sarcasm?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Are they shouted at or the target of spontaneous anger?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And this might be less relevant in a time of COVID, but do they experience behaviors intended to intimidate them, such as finger pointing, invasion of personal space, shoving, blocking of the way, things like that? No.
No.
Well, that seems like workplace bullying to me, because you don't have to meet all of these attributes to be, a target of workplace bullying. You just have to meet some of them with
Right.
consistency. And especially once we're looking at this peach section, this section is all about personal attacks. This absolutely qualifies as workplace bullying.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that is one of the things that people tell me, is that they feel bullied. They feel like they are being told, if I don't buy into this, if I don't articulate these same ideas that you want to hear from me,
Mm-hmm.
that they are facing repercussions, whether if it's being socially ostracized or taken off a promotion ladder that they were already on, or given
Mm-hmm.
different tasks, maybe move to an office that's not as nice. Yes, it's very much bullying. And also, a lot of people have said to me that they feel very abused by the imposition of critical race theory at their workplace, that it feels very abusive to people to be told, well, you are a racist. We know that you're a racist. And anything that you do to object to that, or if you show emotion because you're upset that you've been called that, that is just further evidence of your racism. It
Mm-hmm.
really puts people in that kind of Kafka trap, and it's really similar to the tactics that abusers use in interpersonal relationships.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I just want to read the proper definition, or at least the one that I use for workplace bullying. And it's actually at the top of this form, just to give people a little bit more sense of specifically how I define it. And this is from Bartlett and Bartlett, which was basically a literature review done of all the materials on workplace bullying up until 2011, which is when it was published. And they defined workplace bullying as the experience of repeated and unwelcomed negative acts, such as criticism and humiliation, occurring at a place of employment that are intended to cause fear, distress, or harm to the target from one or more individuals in any source of power over the target. And this last part is the critical one, where the target has difficulties defending him or herself. If
Mm,
they cannot defend themselves, then that is one of the key qualifying attributes
mm.
that denotes workplace bullying.
Yeah, that really nails it. And that's what people are experiencing. And I've had a lot of people describe their experiences of CRT in the workplace as traumatic. And people who have a history of trauma, it is really reigniting their symptoms.
I bet it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had not thought about this directly related to workplace bullying in this way until this conversation. And now it's like, this is like a chilling experience for me.
Yeah, I'm
Ah,
so glad you're highlighting that, because yeah, everybody feels bullied. And before I came forth and spoke out as this stuff was creeping into my job, I felt that too. I felt like if I don't appear enthusiastic about this ideology, if I don't subscribe to every single aspect of it, this is absolutely going to affect how I am treated at work. And how do I know that they're not going to start to find things wrong with my performance all of a sudden? Because your employer, even if they were afraid of a lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
they can always start to find things wrong with your performance. So they have tremendous power over you.
Yeah. And they will. They will. If an employer wants to fire you, they will
They will.
create a reason to fire you. And
Yes.
and, and the reality is that they don't even need to do that because most employees in the United States are employment at will, which means they can be fired at any time for any reason or for no reason at all. So your employers do not need to give you reasons if they're going to fire you. They can just say, "We don't have to give you a reason. Bye."
Yeah. Yeah. And people have mortgages to pay, and
Mhm.
your health insurance is with your employer. Sometimes somebody has a sick spouse and they cannot lose their health insurance. So
Mhm.
it's quite terrifying for people, and people really do sometimes feel traumatized by this.
Oh, absolutely. And, a lot of times when I tell people that, they'll say, well, I'll just sue them for wrongful termination. Well, good luck finding a lawyer to help you because the onus is on you to prove
Right.
you were terminated for the reason that you think you were terminated. And that is almost dang near impossible.
Yeah, almost impossible to prove, certainly.
All right. Heavy stuff. But I think it's important that we're having this conversation and showing this directly because that form that I just used, that is literally the thing that I use to measure workplace bullying in real life. I'm happy to send it to anyone that wants it. I've actually posted it publicly. I've made it available for people to use. So if you want that form, just get in touch with me and I will make sure that's available. All right, let's go through some more super chats. Alexandra, it says, yo, mount that like button. Exactly, guys. If you're enjoying this conversation, please mount that like button because we don't smash the like button on my channel. We mount the like button.
Have you heard
That
the expression before?
came from Joshua, who is a spicy lad that I host a show with on Tuesday nights on this channel. Sheila, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. David Skidmore says, what percentage of people would you guess believe that just because it is easier professionally than pointing out how insane it is? So essentially, like, how many people go along with this stuff just because it's the path of least resistance? I think that's high. What do you think, Jen?
I think it's probably the majority of people.
Which is all the more reason why, and I know why. I understand why people are afraid to speak up and fight back. I get it, but I'm gonna say this every single live stream I ever do. If every single person that was opposed to this ideology just stood up and said no, we've had enough, then it would be over in an instant. There'd be nothing
Yeah,
that they could do.
there really would be absolutely nothing they could do.
Yeah.
And there are different approaches. If an employer wants to do diversity, inclusion trainings and education, there are approaches that are not based in critical race theory or critical social justice, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not divisive, and they emphasize compassion and shared humanity and diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not have to be this way. I do think that there's employers out there who really don't know. They've kind of haplessly bought a CRT package of diversity training, and they don't realize what they've done, because most people don't go around thinking about this. They're just living their lives. um,
Yeah.
but there's Chloe Valderie's theory of enchantment. There's the Open Minds platform. There's the Moral Courage College. There are other
Mm-hmm.
options.
Yeah. I do. I mean, one of the primary trainings that I did with organizations is disc training. I actually still do disc training with organizations, like on the down low every once in a while. But like disc training is all about just different communication styles. And, it's not based on your race. It's not based on your gender. It's just about how you work with people who think differently than you. Fabulous. Do that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, talk
Yeah.
about building connections in the workplace. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I actually tried to there was a brief moment when all this George Floyd stuff started that people were asking me if I did diversity training, and I was like I do this kind of diversity training. And they never went for it because they always wanted the race stuff, and I was like, no, I'm not shilling that. No. Um but they're starting to. I'm actually
You had hopped on it.
well, and a lot of people have said they're like, Carlin, you should create anti-woke training, and I'm like, I just don't I don't want to buy into this ideology in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to be responsible for perpetuating it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just refuse. Like, I don't need to, so why would I?
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I was joking. I just think there's, for people who are some of the people that are doing this really, I think they're grifters. They can make a lot of money with very little skill or talent and go in and give a talk. Fairfax County paid $20,000 for Ibram X. Kendi to give a 1 hour talk. That was Fairfax County Public Schools that paid for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like
taxpayer money. This is a person who said that the only solution to past discrimination is current discrimination. This is a person who is absolutely undisguisedly advocating for discrimination, and they paid him $20,000 to come and talk to the staff.
It is absolutely a grift for so many of these people, and so many of these trainers, they don't even buy into it most of the time. And it's like, people always, anytime someone accuses me of being a grifter, I just laugh at them. I'm like, do you know how much more money I could have made if I did a corporate training today?
Exactly.
Like 10 times what I make in an average day, I could have made doing a corporate training.
Oh yeah.
Godard Bazaar says, my old boss found out I was an anti-feminist and told me I deserved to be, I'm not sure you meant draped there, but I couldn't do anything against him. I was a victim. Yeah, I mean, that's the reality. That's the reality. Yeah. Let's see. I think we had one more super chat and then we can wrap up this bad boy. Michael Ray says, tip for defending against bullying. When called a racist or any other names, just say thank you. Don't get defensive, just say thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where anytime someone calls me a racist, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Fine. Can we actually talk about the thing now?
Well, you know what Douglas Murray says about that? He said, if everybody's going to go around calling each other racist, something you can't prove you're not a racist, why not just say to them, oh, well, then you're a pedophile?
Yeah.
They can't prove that they're not. So,
No. The more you deny being a pedophile, that's just proof of you being a pedophile.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Well, Jen, I want to thank you for, being brave, speaking up, fighting back, quitting your job out of principle, and now going and doing the great work that you're doing with Counterweight. I know that you're going to help a lot of people, and we need more people like you that are in this fight in that way. So I just want to say, on behalf of everyone here, I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I have met the loveliest people that work at Counterweight, and all of the clients of Counterweight have been such highly ethical, lovely, principled people.
Mm-hmm. Now, if people want to get in touch to maybe connect with you through Counterweight, or what is the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, just go to counterweightsupport.com. And they have a little drop-down menu. It just says get help. You fill out a quick form. It'll only take you 3 to 5 minutes. And you can just say you want to talk to me, that you'd like a listening session. Absolutely. Or if you're having trouble and want help pushing back with an employer, or if your employer is perhaps penalizing you for not being a social justice warrior, Counterweight is here to help.
Excellent. So you guys go to counterweightsupport.com or .org? .com. And that's how you can get in touch if you're looking for additional help and support. Well, guys, that's all we have for this live stream today. Thank you for spending some time with us. Now, I'm not done yet. I do have one more live stream this week, and tomorrow is our happy hour live stream at 3 p.m. where I drink more wine than I should, and we watch an anti-racist training because we need to know what our enemies are saying if we're going to fight back against them. And tomorrow we've got a doozy. Tomorrow's training is called something like being anti-racist isn't about being nice. And so I think we can all, and it's from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. This is an actual training they had on their YouTube channel. And so I think we can all see exactly where this is going to go. So come and join me at 3 p.m. with your beverage of choice in hand, and we will watch that training together and cope as a community. All right, Jen, thank you so much for taking the time out today. Again, we very much appreciate you. And you're welcome. And I'll catch you guys later. See you tomorrow.